we get that space elevator, probably too high G an experience for me.
So you're pro space elevator?
Oh, totally pro space elevator.
It's Michael.
Hello, Joel. Good to talk to you again. Great.
Is that an Apple, like old school Apple? What is that back there?
Yeah, that's an old Mac Plus. Yeah.
That thing's amazing. Like how small that is.
The old 9-inch monitor, yeah.
And then next to it, you've got the big, like modern screen. It's just like, it's unbelievable what 20 years will do.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to see more around, you'd see I've got a whole museum here. I just taught my niece and nephew to code on Apple IICs, code in BASIC, and it's remarkable to see how low code as a concept really isn't new. The idea that business people are going to be able to build applications isn't new, but the tools we have are considerably more advanced today.
What other cool old technology do you have there?
Oh my gosh, I've got some of everything. I mean, we've got the original iPod, the original iPhone, some older stuff, a whole bevy of old Apples, Apple IICs, Apple IIes, the original PowerBook, the original Mac Portable, pre-PowerBook days, more of a luggable, has a big carrying handle, weighs about 17 pounds, I think. Just anything cool like that. I've got even much older technology as well, and old walkie-talkies from the 1940s.
Really?
Some fun old radio tech, yeah. Things that have been passed down. Not to mention, of course, the old classic gaming consoles. You got to have original Atari 2600 and original ColecoVisions and things back from the 8-bit era.
So where do you keep all of this stuff? Do you keep it at like your house and you bring friends over and show them, or do you keep it at the office?
It's both. It's both in the office and at home. But the bigger collection is definitely at home. There's no room for it all at the office. So of course my wife would complain there isn't room for it at home either. So
I listened to this one podcast, Joe Rogan, and he's got this like warehouse that's like a man cave where the people they fly in, they come in to him. And have you ever heard that before? Have you ever heard his podcast?
I've heard his podcast. I haven't heard about his collection, but I've definitely seen a number of people who've built, filled barns full of classic equipment of one kind or another. I'm not at that stage yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I don't think he has like a lot of technology, but he's got like the fitness stuff and the cars. And I was thinking about doing a version of that, but like for technology. I was actually just thinking about that last night as I was falling asleep. I was like, what is the next level for the podcast? And I said, maybe we rent like a warehouse, and because we rent an office right now, but I was like, if we just rented a big warehouse, we could put some cool old technology stuff there, and then we could have people, we could pay to fly them in for the shows, and then it would just take it to that next level.
Yeah, certainly. And fill in whatever 80s techno vibe you want. Get some old arcade consoles in there. Get an old Tron machine or an old Space Invaders if you want to go back to the 70s.
Yeah, I was thinking some older stuff, but then also we get like one of those robotic dogs that you see from that company that spun out of MIT, Boston Dynamics.
Oh, right. The serious dogs that are going to kill us all, right?
Yeah,
I was thinking more. Well, I was thinking more like a Sony Aibo, the old little cutesy pet dog. But yeah,
no, that would be cool too. We could put them next to each other, right?
Yeah. They'd make a good pair. Yeah.
Yeah, I looked into this in 2017 or 18 to try to buy one of those. Jake, if you can remember, just chat it in the thing here. But to buy one of those robotic dog things that Boston Dynamics is building, and they were saying like they weren't selling them. They're like one person that they would let them take to tech shows and things like that. And but I went and checked like 2 weeks ago, and now you can buy them for development purposes, and they have like an SDK for it, and they've gotten way more accessible. So I was thinking, I'd probably buy one of those and program it like a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. I saw that they were getting more. They were attempting more outreach to developers, and that they gave one to the Mythbusters guy to do a little TV episode about and showcasing the programmability. That you can find that online.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love the Mythbusters. They're still doing that show?
Well, I don't know what the current production schedule's like, but the the two guys, Jamie and I forget his other gentleman's name, but they have their
Mr.
own stuff
Beard.
now.
Yeah.
And so the one of them has got his own show that he does where he does fun things, and he was playing with the Boston Dynamics dog and having it try to climb over rocks and trying to program it and teach it stuff. So that's you can find that on YouTube. But
I will definitely check that out.
Yeah. So we've we like to experiment with robotics too. We have a robot in the office called Baxter, which is one of those that's designed to be. It's basically a Linux box with arms and legs, and so it can. You can teach it to do things just by basically moving the arms around, and it's safe to work side by side with humans. Now it's incredibly slow, and it's already obsolete the way robotics changes every 6 months, but yeah, we're a software company. That's what we do, software. And we just, like everyone else, though, we'd like to see more of the fusion between the internet we see online and the real world around us. And so with sensors, we can create digital twins. And with Internet of Things, we can begin controlling the universe instead of just modeling and representing it. And so, yeah, there's definitely a convergence, coming.
I like the way you said that. Now, have you guys gotten back into your office? Because at first it looked like you were in your office, and then when you moved around a little bit, I'm like, oh, that's a Zoom background, a custom Zoom background you must have made.
That's right. That's the custom Zoom background of my office, which is so no, I'm not back in my office. This is my way of being back in the office. As of the end of June, we'll have about 10% of our workforce back in headquarters. So,
and where's that located?
Oh, in Tysons, Virginia. So just outside of
Nice.
Washington, D.C. Yeah, the local Virginia just entered phase 2 reopening. So we'll start with low density access.
I was thinking about you a lot when the whole COVID thing happened, because that PPP stuff came out, and it was like I was talking and thinking a lot about how these companies are going to spin up like PPP applications. And I was like, that sounds like a perfect use case for low code. Did you guys get to do any of that?
We did. And in fact, many of our clients went ahead and used us. They already owned our software to build PPP apps in the 24 hours right after so the government announced the legislation finally passed and was signed into law on, I think it was a Thursday. And so there was no warning as to what was actually going to be in it, and no real knowledge as to what regulations were going to be required for the banks to implement. So what they did was they used Appian to overlay their existing loan origination systems and created that custom application process and did it in hours rather than days, weeks, months. And then they also frequently called us up for help, and so we got involved in helping them scale out those programs. But they were able to use low code to do that work in hours, and that was really a clear use case for why low code makes so much sense in the modern world, in terms of not just being able to respond to a crisis, but just being able to move fast, just being able to get to market faster. And more importantly, as those regulations continue to change, as their interpretation changes, as the Small Business Administration puts out new guidance, as Congress gets more involved and puts in place their own priorities, the banks are able to respond in real time. It's not an onerous process to rethink those business rules. And to give you another example, with Appian, we always talk about automation in the context of what we call full stack automation. So when you model work in Appian to automate it, and that's what Appian does. So as a low-code automation platform, we help people automate their work. You model it as if humans are going to do it. We don't assume that we're going to be replaced by robots anytime soon. Instead, what we do is we use technology to augment human potential and human decision-making and accelerate human decisions. And so you model what the human would do if they were handling an application for a loan for a small business through the PPP, that payroll protection plan program from the government under the CARES Act. And then we allow tasks to be delegated to RPA bots or to AI algorithms or to APIs, to application programming interfaces as desired. But if one of those automations fails, if your robot dog falls over, the work is already modeled to flow automatically to be escalated to the next type of automation technology or to a human. And so you don't lose a step there. Everything continues to flow. And this turned out to be pretty crucial because before too long, the Small Business Administration came out and banned RPA bots from submitting to their website. Their site was overwhelmed, and they said you have to use either human workflow or our API. And of course, Appian customers, that was not a problem at all. That were easily able to either not adjust because they were already using one of those other automation methods, or just the work flowed to somewhere else, to another Appian automation. And at the same time, I was getting phone calls from consultants working with other banks using other technologies. They were frantic that day. That afternoon was crazy. And people were losing their minds, calling me up saying, what are you guys doing? How are you adapting to this? Like, how is this possible? Are you going to join us in calling up the SBA and complaining? And I was like, no, everything's fine. You should, if you were depending on a bot to do all your work for you and thought that was going to work, it didn't matter if the SBA banned you. You were going to run into problems anyway. As soon as the rule changed, as soon as the process changed, as soon as a system changed somewhere, your bot was going to need to be reprogrammed. So, it's just obvious in today's world that you want to augment human potential, not replace humans.
Yeah, and I was right in there, right, as a business owner. So I submitted, they're like, oh, submit here. And you submitted there. And then you get an email like a couple days later saying, oh, like, we cannot accept this, because people started accepting prior to I forget the exact words, but they didn't release, they've passed a law, and then they have to release guidance to the banks. And then it's interesting to actually go through this process in real time, because I never experienced anything like it. But now, just by living through this period of time, I understand how like all the SBA stuff works, but just on a much longer process.
Yeah.
Because they first create it, and then the banks start to implement it, but it's not perfect. So then they come back with a bunch more questions, and then they have to go have meetings and make adjustments. And then it's basically like product development happening in real time between the government and the private sector. And it was really kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah. And not just intellectually interesting, right? It has a real impact on people's lives. And so being able to build an agile system that can be changed by the business owners, right? This is not an academic problem. This is the way you build resiliency into a modern society, into a technologically advanced civilization. And while we experienced it now with COVID, this isn't the last time society is going to be challenged and civilization is going to be challenged, whether it's by a pandemic or murder hornets or a hurricane or whatever, right? We have to build resiliency into our systems and agility, and not depend on traditional waterfall development. I was anticipating floods, I guess, is the next disaster.
The hurricanes. Yeah.
So yeah, it's sorry you had to go through that, but the next stage, of course, will be the forbearance process as small businesses ask for forgiveness of the loans. And we're right there. Our banks are already working to implement those. As we learn more about the rules and guidance that will come from the government at the last minute, we'll be there to make those adjustments in real time.
Yeah, that's like the whole next step. But I was pretty excited about the updates that got passed. I don't know if they got signed into law. I think they did, because I got an email from my attorney, but they extended it to 24 weeks coverage period. And they did a couple of other things too, to help with the forbearance.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the CARES Act touches a lot of different other parts of life, but COVID, challenged us at Appian to respond like it challenged everyone. And so not only did we do the PPP applications you're talking about, but we introduced a workplace safety application, which is now being used by some of the largest companies in the world to track the health and safety of their workers, as well as the contact tracing manually if someone reports that they've tested positive for COVID, and the follow-up case management is all managed in Appian, because Appian is typically used to pull together data and to automate the processes for resolving a case. And of course, the facilities management to ensure that your facilities have sufficient personal protection equipment, PPE, and are cleaned after an incident, so that people can return to the workplace safely. And so, working with large global manufacturers, Appian, of course, being a large global public company, has that ability to have this multilingual solution working, internationally, securely, HIPAA compliant here. Europeans don't care about HIPAA, they care about GDPR compliant there. high trust certified cloud solution that can be configured in a day by HR staff without needing coders. And that's allowed us to reach a whole new audience of people who are not traditional Appian clients, and help them in their time of urgent crisis to get up and running more quickly.
That is really exciting. So have you seen what they're doing with the workplace safety solution? Like I don't
Yeah.
I can imagine if you're a large, I'm a small business. I can imagine if you're a
Mhm.
large company, you're going to have some like guidelines or thing like, but what are they using the low code stuff for?
Yeah. So what Appian allows them to do is tailor the guidelines for every facility and its local regulations and regions, as well as that facility's unique requirements for health and safety. So you can imagine an office is different from a manufacturing site. And if you think about it, a typical manufacturer these days will also have its own retail. It will also have its own distribution centers. It has to track visitors, and it has to track contractors, and it has to think about the unique challenges of those different types of environments and have specific guidelines. But rather than having to code those, an HR person can simply go in, pick the facility, create a questionnaire that's tailored to that facility, and give guidelines in response to the answers that people give to those questions. So, depending on the local, situation, that may mean reporting to a local government authority, might require an OSHA, Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration report, because these days now the government's decided that if you get a COVID infection at the workplace, that will be treated like any other workplace injury. And things that weren't even known what the policies would be 4 weeks ago. Well, Appian's able to make that quick update to the solution and push it out to all of our clients. And so, keeping everyone going in this time. Yeah.
It's definitely interesting. It's interesting to see um, it's interesting to see this happen because it amplifies like these core principles of human behavior.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from just like a observationist standpoint, it's a lot of fun. And there's obviously a lot of leeway given and understanding, but it was definitely cool to see everybody respond so quickly. And this idea of building an app from scratch for everything is just so not possible for situations like this when you need like a low code infrastructure.
Yeah. It wasn't possible without low code, and now it is.
Yeah.
We we all were shut out of the workplace when Virginia shut down, for example, in March. And within a few days, we had the first workplace safety application up and available. And today we actually just launched a specific version for universities called Campus Pass and
Oh,
higher
cool.
education. And so again, think about the unique needs of a student population, trying to figure out who's coming back to campus in the fall, and the way the different generations are responding, and giving faculty and students, administrators, all the interfaces they need. That's something that we were pretty excited to do, and it just took another week's worth of work on top of what we'd already done. So yeah, it's incredible what low code can enable, and it's obviously not just us anymore. It's the whole ecosystem of Appian partners who are doing incredible things for their clients.
So I was curious about, I was doing some research, right?
Mhm.
And about the topics for 2020 in technology. And one that I've seen rising up is the RPA. And so I'm
Mhm.
curious, how does low code and RPA like interface with each other?
Yeah, so we've been interfacing the two for years now, and I think people are just starting to realize how intricately connected they should be. If you think about, on the one hand, traditionally RPA was just used to automate a repetitive cut and paste task into a system that didn't have an API. So if you want to scrape a website, scrape a web page, or you want to interface with a legacy green screen mainframe, so RPA would be fine for that. But if you need to build a new system that doesn't exist, RPA can't help you. That's really where low code shines. But in reality, what you need is the best of both worlds. So say you want to build a new system to handle PPP loans. Well, you're going to need to build that new, so you need some low code. But you're going to need to work with your existing finance system. You're going to need to work with your existing loan origination system, and you may be able to do that with an API. But inevitably, there's going to be something that doesn't work elegantly. And now you've got your RPA bot who can help you marshal the right paperwork and low code can help you then, finish the work and give you a total solution. So it really is low code platforms allowing you to build context and intelligence and state management and really that whole picture that an RPA bot doesn't have, because an RPA bots, they're really kind of stupid. I mean, let's be clear. They do only exactly what you teach them. They don't have persistent memory. They don't have that overall process context of end to end. What is the goal you're trying to accomplish? That's what you build in an app. That's what you model in a low code platform, in a low code automation platform. And so by combining that human work with the ability to task an RPA bot from within a low code platform, then you get the true value. And so that's what we've done with Appian. Whether it's an Appian bot, we provide our own RPA bots, which are great. They're cloud bots. They can scale them up really cost effectively, have a large bot farm processing a lot of paperwork for you. Or we work elegantly with our partners. UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, all work seamlessly out of the box with Appian and our robotic workforce manager. And that's our approach to things. It's like in the modern world, systems are becoming more distributed. There's more participants and specialists. And this idea that we're all going to be using IBM computers, running IBM software, and that's all you'll ever need, like that the 70s mentality of the mainframe is dead. So we give you everything you think you need. But most importantly, we give you the ability to swap out any of our pieces with your favorite vendor, your favorite choice, and keep that integration, keep that holistic control.
You get pretty excited about this stuff.
Well, it's, to me, it's what I think I've said to you in the past. I grew up with this notion, like that Macintosh computer behind me on the screen. I grew up with Apple IIs. I grew up with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak promising that we would all be creators of technology and that we wouldn't have to be computer scientists to do it, that we could be biologists, we could be astrophysicists, we could be economists, we could be political scientists, we could look at the world through what we're passionate about and use technology to get our work done faster so we could think about changing the world and not think about syntax errors. And so, yeah, I think what we're doing is really important to unlocking the entire, human potential. And it was something that was promised to me and as a kid, and it wasn't delivered. It turned out to be so much harder than just coding in BASIC. And that's a shame, right? Technology is so much more sophisticated than it used to be. And yet it's still so much harder than it should be and it needs to be to actually empower people to be creators and to design a better future. So yeah, that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Preach, Michael. Dude, I love it. I feel the same way. And it's these type of people, that see it and they get this desire to push it forward that actually end up as a collective. There's enough of us, we reach critical mass and then we push things forward. And that's how we get to the next stage. And, I keep when I first started having this topic of conversation about Elon Musk Neuralink and persistence of consciousness, I kind of was awkwardly going into it saying the general sentiment that I hope he achieves the goal and we reach the ability to capture a state of consciousness and persist it prior to me expiring, right? And
Yeah.
so, but now I'm like, no, there's no reason to be shy about that. That's not that science fiction-y. I mean, with, things that give me hope. The lady that made the discovery of CRISPR gene editing, right? Mm-hmm. Prior to her doing that, she said they were like 3 to 10 years out, and then she did it and it was like blown away. Like we really just have like a few little massive changes that need to take place in our understanding of physiology and our psychology, and then that could actually be possible.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that specific example. I was just started reading John Scalzi's science fiction work called Old Man's War yesterday, and the concept is built, that book is built around transferring consciousness into a new body. And so that's science fiction. Elon Musk is working on science reality, and it will be 3 to 10 years off until the day they invent it. So I think that there's a great deal of progress that can be made and improvements that can be made without us even solving the entire problem. You think about it with prolonging quality of life. I mean, for me, I'm a living example of that. I had a heart transplant 10 years ago, and that was, first attempted back in, I think, the 1950s by Beckley, and like 56, maybe something like that. Maybe maybe a little after that was the first attempt. And yet it took some unlocking of the immune system, right, to actually make that system work. We don't know what we're going to have to unlock to make it possible to, interface better with machine and consciousness in the human. But we do know that it's fundamentally going to behave according to the laws of physics and biology that we already know. So it's well worth exploring, and along the way, along that journey, who knows what kind of advancements in human quality of life and human potential will unlock.
No, you make a good point, because we also don't have to, it's not like we have to unlock it all at once. Like if we just got everyone to live 150 years through a few advancements, and then that just buys us more time. Because I'd say the area where we lose the most productivity is in death, because all these lessons have to be, you got to first wait 20 years for maturity. Then you have to learn all of these lessons, and then you get into maturity with knowledge, and then you have a small portion of the career left, and then you're in retirement. So you just have that sliver, right? And so if we can expand that by improving our length of life, that would just help it grow even faster and get us these amazing advancements sooner.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, obviously, every new technology advance has to be thought of in terms of its holistic impact on society, and what will it mean when if we do achieve greater longevity for opportunities for young people. I think that ultimately we have to understand and find our place in the universe and grasp what does it mean to be finite in our lifespan, and to all have the same amount of time, whether it's 20 years or 200 years or 2,000 years. It's one lifetime. So how do we make that meaningful and take care of what needs to be taken care of around us?
Yeah, because I mean, even if we get persistent consciousness, we still have the heat death of the universe.
Yeah.
So
that's a little longer perspective problem, but
yeah. But the time will fly by.
So
I like thinking big. I like that you like to think big, and I like that there's also a realistic path, because Musk isn't saying we're going to invest billions to persist consciousness. He's just saying that's the end result. We're going to start by making better technology to solve things that are very solvable through current implants. And so I love that the path to where we want to go is laid with legitimate business reasons along the way, because that makes it all the more possible.
Yeah. So the smartest thing that Musk ever did was realizing that the entire game of getting to orbit was about price per pound. It was just economics. That's really it. So as cool as it is watching those Falcon 9 rockets land, or a Falcon Heavy break apart and land in pieces individually, it's really all serving one very basic economics principle. Can you lower the price per pound to orbit? Because until you do that, talking about Moon, Mars, talking about Starlink, talking about anything you want to do outside of the influence of Earth's gravity is academic. It's totally irrelevant. And when we look at the history of human spaceflight, or any spaceflight for that matter, robotic or human, it comes down to that basic economics. And this, just like the personal computer was supposed to allow us all to just become creators, the space shuttle was promised to my generation in 1978-79 as being something that was going to unlock human space travel, and anyone was going to be able to go to space. Why? Because it was supposed to be reusable. It was supposed to be 10 times cheaper per pound to take anyone and anything that they need, like water and air, with them to space. Now, the shuttle turned out to be 10 times more expensive than a disposable rocket in the end. And it never achieved the 60 or 70 flights it was supposed to be taking a year. Instead, we got about 60 flights the entire life of the program, from 1980-ish to 2000. What was that? 2012, 2013, last shuttle flight, right? 2012, 2011, maybe. Who knows, right? So
early 2000s.
Yeah. So I mean, I saw that last shuttle orbiter when it was down. I was down at the Cape for the Juno mission to Jupiter, and they were still servicing the last shuttle before it was sent off to the museum. And I was moving. It was quite emotional because the shuttle program to me represents like all of this American potential and this belief in progress and science, and it was going to make our lives better. And it did tremendously cool and valuable things like putting Hubble up and repairing Hubble and building the International Space Station and many other things. But it was also a colossal disaster. The shuttle program not only resulted in multiple deaths tragically, but also tragically set us back in our quest to lower the price per pound to orbit. It's so strange to talk about, but like that's what it was for. It was supposed to make it cheap and affordable for you to take a vacation to space, go stay in a low Earth orbit, hotel. That's fun, but that allows the money to push science ahead. We should have radio telescopes on the far side of the moon already that are helping us not only unlock the mysteries of the universe and figure out as the universe expanding or contracting and what do we see beyond the observable universe and answer fundamental questions about physics and matter and who we are, but also, say setting up a useful way for us to detect and deflect asteroids long before they can wipe us out the way they wiped out the dinosaurs. So this stuff matters. It really does. And it comes down to understanding simple incremental progress based on fundamental principles. What are we trying to achieve? And so with low code automation, we are trying to make it 20 times faster to build a new application, to automate some work. And if we can achieve that kind of economies of scale, then anyone will be able to create what they want to create. And we will allow, so much value in human creativity to be unlocked that just like getting to space cheaply and getting access to space, we'll get access to cyberspace for everyone. And so that's what we're about. And I love to see inventors who get it, who see right away what is the missing piece and how they can chip away at that and get incremental value to fund their continued revolutionary progress.
I like that you have that model, because I have a model in my head that I ask myself, what are the humans building constantly?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm standing on another planet and I'm looking down and I see them all going to work and doing their things, they're all building something as a collective organism. What are they doing? Where are they going? And then how can I help remove resistance on that path? Because if you can, that's solving a legitimate problem for the species, and you will be able to generate revenue so that you can, like, people that want to help and be useful, the byproduct of that is revenue. Like, I'm sorry, it just is. It's just the result of it. And you can tell how useful things are service-wise based off of the revenue that's generated from them, because we just keep building on top of things and having new problems and then doing that on and on and on. But I didn't get that idea, that concept, until about 2 years ago on a flight. I was just flying and I was just thinking, and I was like, how is what I'm doing today helping remove resistance from the species to go forward? And how can I tie that back to what I'm doing? And you did the same thing when you were talking about, price per pound, and then connected all the way back to what you're doing. So I like that you have that model in your head. Was I kind of getting close to how you see it?
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Nice. We're best friends now, Michael. Hey, would you ever do one of those, have you seen those low Earth orbit type air flights where you can go, they're padded and you can kind of go? Would you ever do one of those?
No.
No?
I had the pleasure of spending a weekend with Richard Garriott, private astronaut, creator of Origin Systems, pretty much invented Dungeons and Dragons on the computer back when I was a kid.
What?
And he is an investor in Space Adventures who owns the Vomit Comet. It's called, colloquially, the airliner that is padded and goes up and runs the parabola flights. And in the middle of that weekend, he showed up for one of the events. It was organized by his new company, Portalarium, which was making a new video game, right? And he showed up late because they had an extra seat unsold on the flight that morning, and so of course he went out and took it. Like, this is what he does. Like, he's taken countless flights on that thing, taking advantage of his investment, and And so I've definitely had plenty of time to think about it and some access, and certainly could have spent the money for one of those tickets. But no, I do know my limitations and my body, perhaps better than most people, having had it surgically enhanced significantly just to stay alive. So yeah, no, I am not fit for extreme sports and events. You won't find me diving to the bottom of Challenger Deep. You won't find me flying into low Earth orbit or flying parabola flights. No, I am stuck here on the ground trying to invent things so that other people can take flight. Yeah, and that's okay with me.
Yeah, it's all about knowing yourself and knowing what you want. And as I always encourage people to do that, like figure out who you are and what you want, and then go after it. Right? It's not
Well, of course,
about,
the flip side of that, of course, is, if we can just get things moving a little better with material science, we can get the space elevator built, and then I can go to orbit and take a look at get my overview effect experience and see the curvature of the Earth and all of that. But yeah, until we get that space elevator, probably too high G an experience for me.
So you're pro space elevator.
Oh, totally pro space elevator, definitely. Yeah. So, although I will say my cardiologist who did my heart transplant insists that his sutures are stronger than the natural, and that I could probably be fine. But because I that was the first thing I did ask him after the heart transplant. I said, is it all right if I go skydiving? Is it all right if I buy a ticket on Virgin Galactic, and do a low Earth orbit flight? And he was like, he paused for just a moment. He was like, no one's ever asked me that before, which seems strange. I mean, you get a second chance at life. Wouldn't you ask that question at least?
Yeah. Or roller coasters, Yeah.
So, but yeah, we'll see. It's not impossible, but I've got plenty of other exciting things to do right now. So
I have not looked into the space elevator. Like I've seen it, I've seen drawings of it, and I've, skimmed an article, but there's that like skimming knowledge that people have. And then there's like I went down the rabbit hole on this one. I have not gone down the rabbit hole on the space elevator, but there are enough smart people talking about it that it's kind of like encouraging me to do so.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth looking at. You can see, obviously, carbon nanotubes are nowhere near advanced enough for us to build it yet. Or we could build a few inches of space elevator, and we need to build, obviously, a few hundred miles. The principles are all sound. I think that the question is, as a society, can we be organized enough to do it and commit enough of our wealth and resources to have the vision to see that it would, ultimately resolve that question of price per pound to orbit in a dramatically new way that you can never really get to with reusable rockets. For anyone who doesn't understand the space elevator, right, it's just putting a big counterweight out in geosynchronous orbit and building down a cable to Earth, and as you build up, and eventually they meet, and so there's a lot of different ways you can propel the elevator cars up and down, but a lot of different proposals for that, everything from lasers to onboard nuclear power to transmitting electricity up and down the tether. But yeah, it should work. As long as we can agree not to try and knock it over. So yeah.
We don't want to knock it over. I did go deep on carbon nanotubes a few years ago. I did go down that rabbit hole. I was so excited. And then I found out that they could only build like millimeters or feet. It was a very low, very low amount. Yeah. Oh, dude, this is good. You like a lot of different technology stuff.
Well, it's, they don't call me chief technology officer for nothing. So, the other thing worth looking at right now, what's old is new. Now that we're talking about, boots on the moon in 2024 and the new space race is obviously going on, and whether you watch the Steve Carell Netflix version or you watch the headlines and tweet version between China, the US and Russia and others, India, Japan, all have space programs all aiming at the moon and Mars. Heck, even the UAE is launching space missions these days, right? So but the idea of how do you build a moon base and how do you live long term on the moon, there are so many fascinating engineering questions and studies that were done, back in the 50s and 60s, and then shelved when Apollo, ended, and we went for the shuttle program and focused on orbit. And it was primarily because the original plans all were predicated on the idea that the military needed to be on the moon to drop nuclear bombs on Earth, which never made any sense in the first place. but once people figured out that just shooting a missile up and down again was a lot cheaper. So basically, we haven't thought deeply about how to live and work on the moon in decades. And yet a lot of really good science was done on it back in the Apollo program and before the Apollo program. And so now we need to figure out again, because we want to go to the moon and we want to stay. And we want to be able to do science there. We want to be able to, do zero-G manufacturing there. We want to be able to mine, get helium-3 for fusion reactors of the future. So there's a lot of great reasons to be on the moon that have nothing to do with dropping nuclear weapons on people. But you may require a, RTG, a radiothermal, generator, basically a plutonium-powered reactor to stay on the moon for a long time. So, it's a fascinating set of problems, and we'll see how they get worked out. But until we get there, until you start actually having people experimenting, all that theory is only going to get us so far.
I like, though, that I think humans are getting smarter with each generation. Like, I feel like that's a pattern. As far as like, even if you go back and you look at history and like things we used to do, whether it's on like the 10 years or the 50 year or the 100-year increments, it seems like we are just getting smarter as a people. And that gives me hope.
Well, that I would disagree with, Joel. I find the more I study history, the more I'm impressed with how brilliant our ancients were and how stupid we are. How just the basic stuff, right? How did they build the pyramids without computers? How did they, how did philosophers understand that the earth was round, that the earth went around the sun, before we even had direct observation to prove it? That kind of genius to me has always been rare, but I think that it becomes increasingly rare in a world where there's a ton of knowledge, but not a lot of wisdom. And our over reliance on machines and technology and the internet can perhaps allow more of us to get by being stupid. And so what I think when I used to be able to travel overseas before COVID and look at ancient architecture, it was so tempting to look at it all as primitive because you were looking at ruins. And one of the things I really love about augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality is how it's being used by archaeologists and anthropologists to bring the beauty and sophistication of ancient civilizations and ancient architecture to life, so that a new generation can see and respect the wisdom of the ancients for what it was in its glory as it was, rather than seeing the rotted, decrepit ruins of generation after generations, wrecking those castles and wrecking those cathedrals and wrecking those machines that they had built. I think one of my favorite archaeological finds is the ancient Greek combination astrolabe and it's like a computer and found in the Mediterranean. And once they finally started imaging it correctly, they realized that you could calculate all kinds of things, your latitude and the orbits of different planets and all this craziness, thousands of years ago, that they were managing to figure out how to do, and then making mechanical entities to express those calculations, because of course they didn't have, digital computers. So yeah, I'm not convinced that evolution is working to our advantage right now in terms of making us smarter. I am thinking, though, that certainly by building on the inventions of the past, as long as we're smart enough to keep them and not burn down our libraries of Alexandria too regularly, as long as we continue to not let superstition hold us back, as long as we allow free ideas and free thinking, as opposed to dictatorial regimes, repressing scientific discourse and repressing collaboration between teams, then we can, meet the world's challenges. We can detect and identify and immunize society against pandemics. We can, invent better seed stocks so we can feed more people. It's obvious that we're stuck together. So we've got to figure out a way to use technology to, get along and prosper together.
Yeah, that was a lot of good stuff that I agree with. I don't know where I want to jump in and respond, but I agree with a lot of what you were saying. I think I want to talk a little bit about the ancient stuff. They had a lot of time. like signal versus noise, I guess, where it's very noisy now. So I think if you removed the noise today of the advancements, the amount of like philosophical thoughts would be explosive. Like I think there's a lot of that going on, like a lot of people thinking deeply, but we're in such a distracted world now. We have all the tools to communicate the deep thoughts, but we're too distracted to really do it. But I do think overall, like from some of the TED Talks I've watched about the decrease in violence, I think that's padded. I think equally on the other side, there's problems too. Like when you make a society so padded and so easy to survive, you're going to have the weak part of the society grow just by definition, right? It's, I don't know the point I'm trying to make, but I was trying to come to a a good thought there based off what you were saying. But I do think that there are a lot of smart people having deep thoughts. There's just a lot of noise out there too. And I think that the premium people, the people that you'll pay a premium for, the people that can weed out the noise.
Well, certainly that's always been the case, and there is a lot more noise out there from which we have to derive a signal. And if you think about that in pure low-code platform terms, to bring it back to what Appian does, you're able to instrument so much more now. You're able to monitor Internet of Things devices. You're able to instrument a business process. You're able to collect a ton of data, and it still costs money to store all that data. Maybe costs a lot less than it used to, but you have exponentially more data. So you have to be thoughtful about what you keep, and have good filters to focus on what's valuable. But there was something you said that I do want to comment on about the ancients again, and you talked about distraction, becoming more of a problem today than it was, how they had more time back then. I don't know how you measure that, but I know when I enjoy reading old material where generation after generation complains about something. It was television was a big distraction. Before that, radio was going to corrupt our morals and be a distraction, and no one was going to do anything, so we're going to sit around and listen to the radio all the time. Before that, the newspaper and the printing press were these new distractions that were going to overwhelm us with noise instead of signal. And before that, before we had iPad tablets, I'm sure they had wax tablets, and I'm sure that was a big drama. Oh my gosh, the kids these days writing everything down on wax tablets. But and before that, obviously lifespans were much shorter, and your distractions were, you needed to actually hike miles to get water that was fresh if you were lucky, and you had to, barter for food, and you had to be constantly repairing your house and putting new, fresh straw on the rooftop so you didn't, get all washed away or something. And you didn't have the nighttime because you didn't have electric lighting. So, your amount of time to actually think as opposed to just survive was probably minimal. And then of course you probably had 12 children because you couldn't count on many of them surviving childhood. So you were constantly dealing with the sick and disease and all kinds of other horrible things. So I don't know that it's very helpful to think about us as having any special advantage or disadvantage. I think we have to look at what we have today and diagnose it accurately for what it is, and what are our challenges and what are our opportunities. And right now our challenges are still pretty prosaic. We have a ton of paperwork, even though we live in a digital world. Now they're just PDFs. We've got to find a way to scan them more efficiently. We've got to find a way to use RPA and artificial intelligence to efficiently get our work done faster. But to do that, to empower humans to think big about what problems they want to solve. And that's all we're trying to do at Appian. Is give people the better tools to do that. A sharper stick, a better hammer, and so that's the way I like to think about it. In the same way that I like to not assume that every new generation of employees at Appian is somehow fundamentally different than I was as a kid coming out of school. Of course there are differences, and of course they've had different experiences, but it was Cicero who railed against kids these days in his writing. And how this, that to me was like this obvious reality that every generation complains about the next generation after it, and with some good reason, but also every young generation, it's their job to rail and rebel against the old, because we need to get out of their way. And so to bring it back to your idea, like technology can make us all live longer, that may create even more intergenerational friction, because there'll be more opportunity for us to have, this greater conflict of experiences and, Imagine if you have trouble learning Snapchat, how much trouble you're going to have learning, these new implanted machines of the future, unless you were raised with them.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think you make some amazing points. I mean, I know you make some amazing points. I really like, you opened my mind up a lot when you talked about the distractibility of previous people. I don't know why I have it painted in my head that it was, quiet and you were making bread all day or whatever. but
Working
you're
on your
right.
sourdough starter. Yeah.
Yeah. But where it's pulling me as far as a thought is that it's the people who choose to make time for these things, to be reflective, or for the people who have those capabilities and those gifts to like use them. Like some people, like you control their time, and some people are controlled by time, and I mean, for the first, I didn't have self-awareness. I mean, I was a late bloomer. I didn't have like real self-awareness until like 25-ish. Like I didn't realize I was a person on earth with options. I mean, I had already built my own house, and like I had gone through, sold companies and then all of a sudden I just like woke up one day and I get it's like I physically felt, how they talk about like the brain maturing at certain ages. Like I
Sure.
felt the process going and continuing to go in my early 30s. And it's just a really interesting realization, because I could never explain it to my past self. But making the time to think about that stuff, to be reflective, to understand, to achieve new levels of understanding, and be comfortable with the world and understand how it's going through these changes, and like how you obviously are very well versed on like the past, and you look a lot into history and those how things repeat themselves, and how you can develop principles in order to deal with timeless things. And so I think that there will be this maturity people will be able to reach that should be persisted, because it'll help us go farther in the long term. Yeah, I really like the way your mind thinks. I think it's like really, really sharp. You even picked up on like this concept of like belief structures, and when you're talking to the next generation, usually those people are bothered because they're causing issues with their mental model of the world, right? That's usually why I see one generation point down to the next generation. It's like, I had a fixed model, I figured out life, and now you're disrupting it. And the kids these days.
That's right. That's right. If technology can help us adapt to change, then maybe we'll make some progress on that front. And I like how you talk about time. Time is its own construct, obviously. And as a social scientist, we think about I think about, my co-founders are social scientists. We think about how to design software that helps us overcome the tyranny of time, and also overcome the human mind's limitations around how many things it can keep on its mind at once, right? So you can only handle 4 or 5 things cognitively simultaneously, but software can help you, prompt you with reminders, keep you organized, and keep you focused on long-term goals that may have hundreds of things required to attain them. And so, we give humans an ability through software to actually achieve greater things by rewarding the brain's pleasure cycles with instant accomplishment for a deferred gratification of a long-term goal. So, by modeling all these subsidiary tasks, we can keep you excited and engaged and keep things moving. And it may not be pure gamification. It's really just a simple cognitive design with an understanding of the human mind. But to do that at a macro level as a society is much more challenging. I'm trying to solve one problem at a time, but what you're talking about is solving an entire generation's problems and their model of the world and all of those different challenges they face. How can we get people organized and aligned? That's what democracy is the best model we've come up with for trying to achieve consensus, and we know how imperfect that is. So there's certainly room for improvement.
Yeah, and money is a big driver too. That's like a really good one.
It is, right? But even that has its own limitations, clearly.
It does.
And market failures. So.
And everything, regardless of what method you choose, can be, for lack of a better word, I'll use manipulated nefariously. So it's not necessarily, like I think you can almost manipulate any model negatively if you if you have enough energy and will to do so. But like nothing's perfect, but that's when I get into these conversations or states of mind, I remember Bill Nye in one of his books, he talked about this concept of good enough. And so that helps me back down from my natural like perfectionism style. I was like, okay, if it's good enough to pass on to the next generation, if it's good enough for the organic structure of life, then I can use that concept good enough to back down from some of the things I'm being over perfectionist about.
Yeah, that's a great construct, and I love Bill. I had a chance to meet him at the Juno launch as well down at Cape Canaveral, and what a genuine guy in person. He is just like he is on TV. He's thoughtful, he's engaged, and he really cares about people, and was really giving with his time. But to your point, it's it's accepting our own failures and compromises, to make it possible for us to go forward. I am a perfectionist. I don't want to let anything out early, but we have to get into this reality of, yeah, most of what you're doing is good enough. It is helping move things forward, and fundamentally, that's at its best, that's what capitalism encourages, right? Is to recognize that you don't have to wait for we don't have to wait for the perfect car. We can ship what we have now and incrementally make it better.
So as we start to wrap up, because I want to be respectful of your time, can you go a few minutes over? Can you go like 5 minutes over? Or do you have a hard
I believe
stop?
I can, yes. Yeah, that should be all
Okay.
right.
Because I just wanted to get one last thought from you on like your leadership style and how you approach that.
Well, I think that my approach to leadership is like everything else I do. I try to be hands-on. I try to be engaged. I try to plan and be organized, so that when the mission is presented, people understand it and they know where we're going, so they can work independently and not need to be micromanaged by me, because they understand what we're doing and where we're going. They know why we want to build what we build. And then they're empowered to make the 1,000 decisions with local information that they don't need to come back to me for. Because I can trust that they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to make those decisions right there at the point of action, without waiting, without hesitating, without having to, call another meeting and consume lots of other people's time, including mine. So I do like to delegate, but only after I've explained what we're really doing and why. And I think that as well, I want people to trust that I know what I'm doing because I've done it. And so I try to stay hands-on and involved with as much of the business as I can, and really experience just enough of the different jobs and roles so that I can understand and empathize with the front line who is encountering those challenges and resistance, whether that's sales or recruiting or engineering or even finance. It's all important to understand what is it really like to do that role, to do that job, and encounter whatever resistance you encounter in your daily life. So, as a leader, I think it's important to know what your people are feeling and be connected to it, but also have time in your day to think, to take that step back and contemplate where all this is going. What are the existential threats to the business? What is changing around you that could disrupt what so many people are working so hard on? I think that's your obligation as a leader, is to respect the hard work of the, so many people who make it possible for you to be a leader, and therefore to trust, the trust they put in you to be taking the organization in the right direction. You owe it to them to be thinking night and day about, is that really still the right path? Is that still really the right place to go?
Boom. You're amazing, my friend. I'm going to put you on my recurring podcast guest list. And after all this COVID stuff's up, maybe next year, do an in-person podcast. I'll come out and visit you, or we'll meet up somewhere and do something like that. I really genuinely like the way you think. And it's, I'm not shy when I meet really great people, and there's like the top 1% of all the great people I get to meet, and I would put you up in that category. I think the way you think is fascinating. I think the world needs more people that think like you and build great things. And I'm very excited to know you. So thank you for coming on and hanging out with me.
Well, thank you, Joel, and maybe I'll get out to that warehouse you build someday with your robot dogs, and we'll see how the kennel's coming. And
yes.
you know, so
Anything else we didn't get out, or are we good to go?
I think that's terrific. I would just add anyone who's interested in learning more about the Appian low-code platform, just go to appian.com and you can get a free trial and start building, your first application, automate your first workflow in minutes. Yeah.
Amazing. So it's self-service. I could go on and try it right now.
You can go on and sign up for a trial right now. We'll get you approved and get you going. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a great day, my friend.
All right. You too. Take care.
Bye.